Hi everyone. I see people joining. So thank you very much for your patience. I was really busy and attending meetings, and it was a bit of a mix-up, but thank you very much for being here and joining today's Developer Ask Me Anything session. Let's wait a bit more so more people arrive. Hi everyone. Of course, one is Mainnet. Can't talk about the meetings and stuff. Of course, I can't share most of the information is protected by NDA, but well, all I can say is that I really enjoy working on this one. It's a really tangible use case for blockchain platform, and not just a blockchain platform. These guys are tackling a very specific issue, which is related to post-quantum cryptography and how to transition systems from the, well, so to say, mainstream RSA analytic curve-based cryptography solution to the new post-quantum era. And they are also utilizing a specific blockchain for this project, and I really enjoy working with them. But I'm afraid that's all I can share for now. Full set not working on my end. Is it under maintenance? Yeah, if you could try, there was a maintenance and we received a couple reports about it. If you could try with a different wallet address or with a different Telegram handle, that might solve it. Please check it, but we will look into this because there are some users who reported this issue that their Telegram faucet is not working. Please check whether this helps. So again, try a different wallet address, and if that doesn't work, try a different Telegram account. But yeah, we are investigating this issue because we received a couple reports. Specific blockchain, so not. I only said specific. Cannot confirm nor deny whether it's QANplatform. Okay, so from Luca, one question regarding one-click migration. As I understood, one will be able to create an XLink pair using the old address. Yes, this is correct. One is then able to migrate existing smart contracts from vulnerable chains, as well as the liquidity. I don't quite get how the migration will be handled safely, since it relies on the vulnerable ECC private key. So yeah, here's the thing. So this is a very good question. Thank you, Luca. And for the first part of your question, that as well as the liquidity, of course, you can only migrate the liquidity if that particular key has access to the liquidity. So it's not like you can migrate randomly any project's liquidity to the other chain without their permission. So everything you have access to on the other chain you are migrating from, you can migrate and you will have access the very same way on Quan. And as for the second part of your question, I didn't quite get how the migration will be handled safely, since it relies on the vulnerable ECC private key. Yes, so the migration has to be done before the full transition to post-quantum cryptography. So remember, currently XLink provides us with the secure fallback key for post-quantum cryptography, but currently also ECC is used. So we have the restriction currently that in the last 24 hours there must have been a post-quantum signature as well for the account. And of course, this time frame will shorten and shorten and shorten, and eventually ECC will be phased out, of course, because it will be broken. So if you try to migrate anything after ECC has been phased out, that's just not gonna work, because as you see here correctly, because your question points towards this aspect, that after ECC is fully broken, you cannot migrate anything, not because of technical limitations, but because it doesn't make any sense, because there could be fake data you are migrating, because when ECC is already being considered obsolete and it has been broken, then basically anyone could do anything with your key on the migration source chain. So let's say that you had there, I don't know, 2 ethers, then you could have 2000 or you could have 0, because most likely hackers already took over the other chain and they faked everything they can. So it doesn't really make sense to migrate anything anymore. So migration, again, as a conclusion, only makes sense as long as ECC is still considered viable and it's not broken. Afterwards, it doesn't work and it doesn't even make sense. Okay, if I now, next question, also from Luca, if I now want to create an XLink pair using my old ECC key for cross-signing, whose XLink pair is then used for migration, yes, also for future transactions, wouldn't we be back to the old problem on how proof you are the valid owner of the vulnerable ECC private key? How does XLink make sure that the same ECC key is not cross-signed by a bad actor, or cross-sign more than different quantum-resistant private key? Sorry for the long question. No, it's an excellent question, and I think I answered in the previous post. So XLink is only a transition method. So to make it more understandable and easier to grasp, let's suppose that Bitcoin had XLink from the beginning. So of course you wouldn't want to use post-quantum cryptography by default, because it's like just how you wouldn't drive around in the city in a nuclear-proof tank, for example, because it's heavier, it's inconvenient, it's much bigger, it has its drawbacks. So unless you have a very specific reason to drive around in a tank, you would just prefer your car. The problem is with Bitcoin that we just cannot transition to a tank when there is a problem. So everyone will just simply die in their old-fashioned cars because there's nothing they can migrate to in a reasonable way. So what QANplatform offers is that we can drive along in our very comfortable cars as long as possible, and whenever a problem hits, and that's being quantum computing, we can instantly turn our cars into tanks. So the migration is fully seamless, autonomous, but this means that at one point we will have to leave our old cars behind. So your question is valid. So if we will still keep using ECC, and that's where the analogy that would refer to our old cars, then anyone could prove falsely that no, this is my car, no, this is your car, and there would be a conflict. But of course, at the moment when this happens, we just leave it behind altogether, and that will also mean losing most likely Ethereum compatibility and all those side effects, because I'm still not sure how Ethereum is gonna solve this. And when I'm saying I'm not sure, I'm saying that I don't think they can. But anyway, that's a different problem. But when we consider elliptical cryptography obsolete, then there is no going back. So you cannot just say that, hey, I have this post-quantum key as well, and so please let me still keep using my ECC. No, the transition will happen like XLink just won't be there anymore. So XLink is gone. It serves no purpose. And every single account can continue signing transactions using the post-quantum private key, which was linked by XLink. So this is what no other chain has, that when the problem hits, they will sort of need to decide that, okay, maybe we ditch every single account which hasn't signed any transaction in the past 6 months. I don't know, so it will be a hard time for them. But with QANplatform, you have the mathematical guarantee that every single wallet which has interacted with the blockchain before has a fallback post-quantum key pair which they can continue to use, and they are the legitimate owner. I hope this clarified it a bit. Okay, so next one from Godzapper. It seems like UVM-CTL version is referencing an old or incomplete internal tag for the Python precompiler, among other languages. What is the strategy behind the update frequency for these Docker images, and how should users handle these discrepancies in their workflows? I'm not sure, and by that I mean that no, I'm sure they should be up to date, but we will check into this, because the versioning of these compilers, just because you see that Python has version 4 and JavaScript has version 6, whatever. These are not incremental, not related to each other. They use a very specific encoding actually, and all the precompiler and compiler versions are embedded in the deployment transactions themselves. So whenever you precompile a transaction, because the flow goes like first you will precompile a smart contract. So you write your smart contract in whatever language, you will precompile it to get one step ahead, and then you submit this precompiled contract to the blockchain where it gets actually complied on the nodes. And for this, because this obviously needs to be deterministic, the whole flow, so you need to be able to go from source code to precompiled code in a deterministic manner. And you also need to go from precompiled code to compiled code, also, of course, deterministic manner. And you also need to be able to go back. And all this deterministically again. So for this very reason, the payload data when you submit a deployment transaction to the chain will include the exact precompiler and compiler versions, because when we will release a new version of these assets, I mean the precompilers and compilers, those might be more efficient, but of course they wouldn't produce the very same hashes, and it wouldn't be compatible with the previous ones. So this versioning has a lot going on behind the scenes, and why these are necessary and how they cross-reference each other. It's pretty complicated logic, but of course it will be published in the technical and white paper when they get updated along with the mainnet. So yes, I don't think those would be, as you wrote, old and incompatible, because you are referring to the Python precompiler specifically, but I will get this checked. Yeah, we need a mainnet. Yeah, I know that. Audit is going on. Of course, we are not going to launch it prior to that. Yeah, I'm okay, of course. So here's the thing. There is a lot of going on, and there is a crazy amount of work. But the biggest luck is that I enjoy doing this stuff. Of course, I have my biological needs like sleep and such. But other than that, I'm fine. So it's whenever people ask me that, hey, how can you work so much? I mean, I'm also having fun. This is the biggest and hardest game of my life to differentiate between working and having fun, because they kinda overlap pretty much, which is also a good thing and also a dangerous thing, because it's easy to sit in front of the computer for a while, let's say. But no, I'm fine. Thank you very much. So if mainnet is going live soon, is there a wallet created yet? I'm not sure what you mean. Wallet for what? Or maybe you mean like an application, or I guess you need that, or you mean that. Well, and there is a wallet implementation. I don't know how that stands, because of course all the integrations and use cases take precedence, because of course, and here is also something to understand about, because I sometimes see that people are upset about delays and stuff like that, which I completely understand. But also always look at all the deliverables which we as a technical team did deliver, although it was nowhere near any kind of roadmap. And these things don't just happen like, hey, here is something, could you like integrate this please, and you have 24 hours. No, this takes serious time, and we have a dedicated team for these integrations. And of course I need to be in a lot of places. I mean, now the audit is going on, we are still doing many future proofing development activities, the documentation, the integration. So it's really not easy. And when, for example, this question that is there a wallet created yet? Yes, there is a wallet project, and I know it's not anywhere near top priority. Will be there an official wallet? I can tell you most likely the answer is yes. Is it top priority? Nowhere near. So yeah, most likely even with the mainnet launch, there wouldn't be still an official wallet. But here's the good news. That's the exact reason why we made the very first Ethereum compatible quantum resistant blockchain, because you can just use any wallet you prefer. But yeah, of course, it's like having an own wallet is like a nice thing, but yeah, it's a nice to have thing. It's definitely not must have. So, Hardcore, did you implement your own Twitch? Yeah, this is some great open source project we are using called Oncast. It's a really good stuff. So we didn't implement it. All the credits go to Oncast. It's a really great project, and we are thankful to the developers. Next one from Fly Darwin. How will you scale Quan? Most scalable chains with good capacity use either sharding or parallelization. Will Quan launch with either, or will you implement a novel mechanism? Will XLink be available on smartphones as soon as the mainnet launches? For some chains, most activity comes from phones. Would be important to know whether to add mobile support for dApps from the get-go. In the last AMA, you said the mainnet will launch with more features than the testnet. Why aren't they already being tested on the testnet? Have those features already been built? And if not, what is Hacken auditing right now? XLink V2, dev royalties, proof of stake, stable transaction fees, testnet status page. So let's go one by one. So how will we scale Quan? So as for the proof of stake phase, there won't be anything special going on. So you can prefer to the standard proof of stake how Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain works. Proof of randomness will bring a lot of scalability, but that won't be in the first release as announced earlier. So will Quan launch with either, or will you implement a novel mechanism? Yes, the novel mechanism will be proof of randomness, so it's tightly related to the consensus. For the next one, will XLink be available on smartphones? Yes, so this, on the other hand, is a top priority because we do realize that many people are using phones. And even if we don't implement wallet for the mainnet launch, XLink has to be there, in my opinion. So, but even again, I know that the Docker version is not super user-friendly because normal users don't really tend to use Docker at all or even know what it is or what it does. But it's actually essentially a background application. So if you have a PC at home or whatever, you can keep it running there. It would work fine. So you can already use your phone. You just launch MetaMask on it, and you can transact as long as, for example, your home PC is signing the transactions. But of course, we also don't want to be reliable on people having a background PC signing the transactions. So yes, there will definitely be a mobile app for providing the XLink feature set. For yeah, exactly, would be important to know whether a mobile support. Yes, I think you mean the same thing. So essentially dApps, so decentralized applications, they are not directly linked to XLink. I mean, those are just dApps. XLink is the gatekeeper, which wouldn't anyone give right access to dApps for phones without a background signing service. And this is also an important differentiator because dApps would work fine without XLink if you are not writing anything to the chain. So just to give you an example, a really simple one, like if you implement a mobile weather station application dApp on our chain and you just want to read the data, you don't need XLink. You just consume the generated data and process data which is on chain. If you want to update the weather, then you need XLink because you need to, or you want to change the state of the chain, which is on chain, the database. And for that, you need write access, for which you need to send a transaction, which you need to sign. And of course, as the guarantee of XLink, there will not be a single wallet on our chain which doesn't have a cross-linked post-quantum key pair. So yeah, for that you would need XLink. But to read data from the decentralized applications, you don't even need XLink. Okay, so in the last AMA you said that Mainnet will launch with more features than a testnet. Why aren't they already being tested on the testnet? Well, they are being tested on the testnet on the internal ones. So we are still conducting a lot of research with this. And once we will roll this out to the public testnet, it might break stuff. And we sincerely don't have the capacity, because we have seen that whenever something is going on with the public testnet, people tend to ask a lot of questions. They get afraid something is wrong. And we have our internal development lifecycle, and we will ship every single module which we intend to include in the mainnet to Hacken. And of course, if we were wrong, they will most likely notice it, so it should be fine. On the other hand, we are already dedicating far more developer hours to fix issues reported by the community than we could be able to, essentially, because we are really short on developer hours. So we are not, so to say, risking it to rolling out something to the testnet, because then we also need to write the public documentation, because then people need to understand how it works. And yeah, this is just the outcome of limited resources. Okay, and if not, where was I? Sorry. Why aren't they already being on testnet? Have those features already been built? Yes, as I said, these are built, and we are iterating on the internal testnet, which is guarded behind VPN. And if not, what is Hacken auditing right now? So Hacken is starting with the QVM audit. So the first part which is going on is still about the first novel architecture, that is QVM itself. And it also has two parts. The one part is whether the compiled binaries are indeed deterministic. And the first very important part is about trying to break the determinism on two levels. Sorry, I need to take a sip. So the one part of breaking determinism is, can you produce smart contract source code which would be always built to a different binary code? So because, as I told in the first part, you always need to be able to go back. So you go from source code to precompiled code, from precompiled code you go to compiled code, and you need to be able to reverse the process from the blockchain data. And this is the first question, whether this can be broken in any way, that the very same source would build to a different precompiled state, or whether you can go from the same precompiled state to a different compiled state, or in reverse. And that's just the first part. So whenever this is verified that no, it's not possible, then we also need, and this is the more interesting part, to check whether we can break runtime determinism. And to give you an example what runtime determinism is, let's say you're implementing a casino game, a casino decentralized application on Quantum blockchain using a QVM contract. And of course, you somehow need to generate a random number, because that's what most gambling is about. And although at the same time, you need to be sure that whenever your code requests randomness, that randomness is the very same randomness across possibly thousands of machines across the planet. And this is not something easy to pull off, because of reasons I really won't go into that. But generally speaking, why this is important is because if different nodes would produce different random numbers, then they couldn't agree on the consensus, because back to this very same example with the casinos application, one node would say that the next, we are talking poker, the next card is, I don't know, red heart. I don't play poker and I don't gamble, but this I know. And the other would say this is a black spade. And so the nodes can't agree about consensus if they generate different states based on the same input. So the input is that the user is drawing a new random card, And if not all the nodes predict, okay, that the next card must be of this color and this figure and this number, and I don't know, then your blockchain basically just broke, because nodes cannot advance to the next stage because they cannot agree on the state. And also to give another example, if let's say your decentralized application is using the current time, like in to make this more understandable, because one might assume that the time is the same, right, across the whole planet. I mean, minus the time zones, of course. But no, the answer is no. And to illustrate the problem better, let's say that your decentralized application needs to know the exact microsecond or nanosecond at the given time, which you already feel that, okay, that surely must be a bit off across nodes. And again, you would have the very same problem that your decentralized application is depending on the current time, and nodes cannot agree about the exact current time. So these are just two simple examples which are easy to understand. And this is about the runtime determinism, that how can you patch custom, how can you patch the Linux kernel to provide a custom environment where all these so-called syscalls and external calls, which could possibly, not just possibly, which would most likely lead to a non-deterministic state, these are patched and ensured that they still do, that this runtime can be used as a blockchain runtime. So this was one of the biggest issues to tackle. And so, yeah, I did explain a lot of things right here, but this is the answer to the question, what is Haken working on right now? So this is the first one. Well, we have the next one, which will be most likely XLink, but again, as I said previously, I cannot give you exact reports every 2 weeks, so this is not the forum which is about. I'm here to help developers with development specific questions, how to build for the testnet and how things work, because of course we know the latest white paper and tech paper isn't out there. There's a reason for that, protecting IP. And as we said, with the mainnet, everything will be released, all the documentation, the code, everything. But until then, this is the reason for these developer Ask Me Anything sessions, that anything you are stuck with or have questions with, I'm here to answer. This is not a reporting forum for the ongoing audit. So next, XLink V2, their royalties, POS. So yeah, I think we covered most of this table, transaction fees. Yeah, I guess this is related to what Haken is auditing right now. Yes, they are working on a QVM, which is not on the list, but yeah, that's the first part. So next one from Luca. So will one-click migration be shut down sometime in the future together with the Ethereum bridge? Yes, correct. I think we touched this point in not the previous, but maybe the previous Ask Me Anything session, that the bridge will become at one point in time one way, and then it would be shut down altogether. Yes, that's correct. Because literally the way we see it currently and how the industry is moving forward, or not moving forward, there is nothing else reasonable to be done. I mean, as soon as another chain is compromised and you cannot trust its authenticity anymore, it doesn't make sense to allow people to import possibly fake data or corrupted data from that other system, because that would corrupt our system as well. So yes, this is correct. Once ECC elliptic curve cryptography is officially broken and considered obsolete, these features won't be available anymore, unless they, until that time, come up with something, which I don't really see a chance for. But if everything remains as it is, then yes, it will be shut down. Next one, is there a plan for Rust or Zig SDK? For Rust, sure. I'm sure there will be an SDK. And yeah, Zig is really taking off. We didn't talk a lot about this internally yet, but I would be really excited to launch a Zig SDK as well. Heck, I also want to learn to code in Zig, because it really seems like an awesome language, but I'm not seeing myself finding the time to learn Zig. But yes, so for answering the question, for Rust, I'm sure, and Zig, I would really love to. Still need, well, internal decision. Hi, Serbi. Next one. So what is one solution for once ECC can be broken in real time? So, well, just abandon it. So when ECC can be broken in real time, it doesn't make any sense to use it. So it's like when you can easily go through a certain kind of door, then you just don't use that type of door anymore. So the solution is not to use it. Next from Vestady. Will XLink be built into any popular wallets or browsers? If so, anytime soon? Yes, so this will be the approach with the graphical user interface based XLink that we would offer, very similar to MetaMask solution. By that I mean browser extensions. So because most people have browsers running all the time, because this is what most people spend their time on. It's really sensible to not just launch a dedicated separate desktop application, but also include it in as a browser extension. Also keep in mind that for this, the cryptography is very specific behind it. We will need to transpile it, sorry, to compile it to WebAssembly. Compiling it to WebAssembly currently breaks because for the elliptic curve cryptography, we are relying on Ethereum codebase. And if you try to compile the Ethereum codebase parts to WebAssembly, you will see it fails. So that's not on our part. And again, it requires a lot of engineering to either fix those parts which wouldn't compile from the Ethereum codebase to re-implement those parts, but then that's an adds actual extra audit and maintenance burden, because then that becomes our code base which we need to maintain. So it's really not easy. I mean, to figure out what to do and how to do it in the most efficient way, because the easiest way is to, well, just implement it, just write the code. But most people don't see that writing code is creating liability, and you don't want that, because the easier and in the less code base you can implement something. And of course, I'm not saying that you should write obscure code just for the sake of writing little code, but it's much more worthwhile to research and think ahead. How can we make this possibly the easiest way, so we don't create accidentally a huge code base, which is a nightmare to maintain and to audit and to keep it patched, because in the long run, and history proves this, these have been the biggest sources of breaches, that the code base is essentially so complex that it's impossible to maintain it anymore. So yes, for that we are still trying to find a way which is the most efficient to make XLink compile to WebAssembly without any unreasonable choices, so to say. Okay, next one. So, Makart, can you give us some insights of the current standing of the project? We need something. Well, I really can't tell anything else than the public information. I'm sorry, I would love to, but just can't. Yeah, I wonder what the second use case is. Sorry, can't help with that yet. Next one from Keen Angle Bar. So the solution to quantum computing, being able to break real-time elliptic curve cryptography, is the fallback to post-quantum private key. Can you go more into depth on how that works? This replaces the need to XLink to be transaction-based versus account-based. Yes, of course. So from that moment on, when we see that ECC is obsolete, then we don't need XLink anymore at all, because every single transaction is signed with the private key, which was linked to the ECC public key using XLink. So how it goes in a sequence is that currently we have two keys. One is the elliptic curve key, and it's closely linked with the, not closely, it's exactly linked together with the post-quantum private key. And you keep submitting transactions with the ECC private key, and you always link the post-quantum key after it. And when elliptic curve cryptography becomes obsolete, then you simply just ditch the elliptic curve cryptography, and you already have the post-quantum private key, which you will be using for signing further transactions, because that was what XLink was guaranteeing all the way since the beginning of not since the beginning of time, since the beginning of Quant, because that's the only single purpose of XLink, to give every single user the confidence and the guarantee that whenever the post-quantum apocalypse is happening, they have a post-quantum key they can immediately transition to without a doubt, without any user funds getting lost, whatever, which we know will happen with Ethereum and Bitcoin. So to give the direct answer to your question, that yes, this does replace the need to XLink altogether. So XLink will cease to exist, and from that moment on, you sign every single transaction with your post-quantum private key, which was previously linked to your elliptic curve public key using XLink. So that's the whole story. Next one from QANplatform. What advantages will proof of randomness have over proof of stake? How much more decentralized will the network be? How long does it take to develop proof of randomness? What advantages will proof of randomness have? Okay, so it's a duplicate question, which is really interesting because it's clearly not the same message. If I just take a look at the last word of proof of randomness, it's a different case. Anyway, so I think this has been covered previously pretty much about the differences and similarities between proof of randomness. Proof of randomness is really similar to a generalization of algorithm with added benefits. As for, it's a really good compromise between proof of work and proof of stake by taking the best of both worlds, democracy and decentralization from proof of work, and the energy efficiency from proof of stake. So yes, we are looking really much forward to this and releasing it, but exactly because of the quantum problem approaching us in such a rapid manner, and it's been hotter than ever before, we felt the need that, okay, we don't have the time to fine polish everything and release with the proof of randomness. We can just start with proof of stake and then later do the transition to proof of randomness. So yes, proof of randomness will enable us mining, so to say mining, so validation, I would rather say, with low power hardware. That's where the green part comes from. And since everyone has the equal chance of getting picked by verifiable randomness, it brings really democracy and decentralization into the whole process. Next one, any reason why you're not live streaming this as well on X or YouTube? I don't know. I really don't prefer this big tech stuff, although most likely, so this is being recorded and it will be posted for sure, but I don't know. For me, from a personal standpoint, I also don't feel like using Google, Facebook, all that's big tech and all the privacy issues, which sound like really niche problem. If you take a look at it on a large scale and how many security issues arise from data leaking from these providers, it's really scary. And I really don't want to, and again, this is my personal belief, but I really don't want anyone else to treat my own data. So If I treat my own data and I handle my own data and I make a mistake, it's fine. I can blame myself. If someone else leaks it, and I'm not okay with that. Next from Goats. Oh, sorry, I missed one. How decentralized do you see Quant chain in 1-2 years? What steps and when do you plan to make in order to become a more decentralized chain, more community-centric project? Is it the goal to become a DA or later? Thanks. So, well, the question was from Serbi. It's a different question what I on a personal level sympathize with and what and where the whole project is going. I think the project is going in a really good direction in this means, but it's also really important to understand that how blockchains arise from ground up, because what I'm referring to here, that almost everyone from the community has been pushing out, come on, release the mainnet, we really need it. And I'm like, really, do we? Because if we take a look at all the other recent chains which have launched, they are basically dead chains, not a single transaction on them. And I don't really think, because when mainnet, we need the mainnet, launch the mainnet soon, because I guess most people are interested in it from a monetary perspective. And I'm not sure whether just launching a mainnet would bring their desires come true, because as we see on the market, that chain without transaction shouldn't be valuable at all. And I'm not trying to enter any financial speculation here. That's the only thing I won't talk about in this Ask Me Anything session, focused on development for sure. But if you think logically, at least from my personal belief and perspective, it makes much more sense to first gather use cases, partners who are already starting to test and use the product internally. And when the mainnet launches, you also already have a great user base, and then you launch a chain which has actual transactions, actual business going on it. Versus we created the mainnet, we don't have anyone who would possibly use it, but at least we have mainnet. So yes, for this it's important to understand that currently what I really think one needs is a strong user base who are using the chain for actual technical value, which adds tangible value to their current processes. It makes their operations more secure or easier or more seamless, versus just launching a super decentralized chain which no one ever uses. So it's really hard to find a balance in these things, and I think the current direction is good. Although, of course, there will be always people who would prefer to just have the mainnet running, and then we can say that we have mainnet running. So I'm not trying to do a political debate on this question. I just share my own personal belief. And yes, after the mainnet launch, so to answer the direct part of the question, after the mainnet launch, I will be pushing really, really hard to make it as community-centric as possible. But I think the good way to go about this, that when the mainnet launches, there is already a strong user base and there are a lot of transactions, and we can show really cool approaches how and what the Quant mainnet can be used for, and from there it's much easier to build and spread the word that what it is and how it functions, versus just launching a chain and then trying to tell the people that, hey community, we have this great chain here, and would you be please willing to develop a couple applications for this. So I think I won't repeat myself, but we should go the other way around, like approach enterprises, integrate their current systems with the blockchain, and already have a strong foundation when the mainnet launches. So next one, regarding the precompiler issue, Docker hosts a version wildcard 1.0 version for most languages, which leads to a response from daemon manifest for precompiler Python v10.2.0 non-root, not found, manifest unknown. Okay, so thank you very much for this. This is a specific issue which will be super easy to find the solution for. So I will get looked into this, and the answer will be posted to the Telegram development group. Let me copy paste this just a second to make sure we have it. Okay, so next one. What cryptography will be used for proof of stake consensus? Well, what cryptography will be used? I'm not sure whether you mean the signing algorithm here. So most likely we will just borrow Ethereums and wire it up the same way with XLink. So we will keep using the very same until the problem becomes practical, I guess. But we will need to rely on ECC in the future for EVM compatibility, don't we? XLink, as far as I understand, is just a wrapper around the vulnerable ECC key, kind of. But how does XLink prevent from cross-signing an ECC key multiple times? Imagine user 1 has a vulnerable ECC pref key 123, bad actor recalculates the pref key. Exactly. User 1 cross-sign the vulnerable key. Yes. How does XLink make sure that the bad actor 2 can try the vulnerable with another quantum safe key and execute EVM transactions with it? Yes, your question breaks logically at the first step that yes, of course, we will ditch the, and again, a lot of people confuse this. So EVM has not much to do with the elliptic curve cryptography. So EVM is the virtual machine of Ethereum. So the ECC part comes before that. So EVM will receive data to operate on. So the EVM operates on 256-bit words, and it receives that data from transactions. So now we go one step back. The transactions, which the EVM receives the data and the instructions from, so the which function it must launch with which parameters and all this stuff comes from the transaction, and the transaction itself is signed with the elliptic curve cryptography. So first I wanted to say that yes, we will ditch EVM compatibility. No, that's not true. We would keep EVM compatibility. We would ditch Ethereum compatibility, which means that transactions wouldn't be allowed to be signed with purely ECC anymore. So this is a very different question, and people confuse this so many times that sometimes even I do the bad phrasing. But ECC compatibility and Ethereum compatibility are subsets of each other, which means in order to be Ethereum compatible, you have to be EVM compatible, but not the other way around. Just implementing EVM doesn't require full Ethereum compatibility. So, and again, to answer your question directly, when this happens, that means that quantum computers can break elliptic curve cryptography and we consider ECC obsolete altogether, then there won't be no more XLink, there won't be no more elliptic curve transactions, but there still will be EVM. You just have to sign your transaction with a post-quantum key pair. And from that moment on, it still works everything as usual. Okay, next from Upbeat Austin. Hi, will we be able to create cold wallets on the Quant mainnet from the start with XLink and hardware wallets? There is no reason to be upset. Rather, take your time and then start your with problems and people lose their faith. Keep on going. Yeah, thank you. I'm not upset. I'm just you know, it's really hard to see the big picture from the other side. And I mean, I recognize that because I'm in this 24/7 and I see a lot of details and aspects and what should be done and how it should be done. And I also understand that someone who is not inside of all these development challenges and implementing the use cases, attracting external partners and solutions. It's really hard to see through everything what's happening. Although what I said as an example that if you take a look at the roadmap, let's try not to just look at the things which were not delivered in the promised time, but let's also try to look at the things which weren't on the roadmap at all. And I think that's the fair approach to this question, and most of the people don't look at it that way. So they just insist on complaining about the stuff which wasn't on time, and they are not actually talking much about the stuff which wasn't on the roadmap at all. So I'm not upset. It was just a comment from me in order to be fair, we should, I think, inspect both ends of this question. Next one, what is your next immediate milestone you are targeting? Will you go live right after audit? Is there a plan to attract developers to start building right after mainnet? How will this network grow? Yes, I don't know when you, so the question came from Flamboyant Goodall. So I don't know when you connected to the session, but yes, this is exactly what I said, that after the mainnet, we release everything, we gather the community. The only thing we wanted to make sure that we are well ahead with use cases and implementations and applications, I mean, tangible ones which are already running on the chain. So yes, after the audit, we will go, well, right after audit. So maybe not next day, but within a very reasonable time. So yes, the plan is that after the mainnet audit is completed, launch the public mainnet. Yes, I can confirm that. Next one, how much stuff do you currently have working on Quan? Can you give us a breakdown? Well, a lot. Of course, I'm interacting mostly with the devs, but we have a really strong core team. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't want to say, but we have all the capable people which are required to execute the project. How will developer royalties be distributed? Only on the development, only on the deployment of a contract that includes another one for every transaction that passes another contract. Let me read this again. Only developer, okay. Only on the deployment of contract that includes another one. Both. Okay, now I got the question. So basically, you would get a royalty for importing even parts of a contract which is already deployed, and the transaction fees would be always distributed among the validators and the contract creators hierarchy. So to give you an example how this would work, let's say I write a contract consisting of, it isn't directly tightly coupled with lines of code, but it's the easiest to understand that way. So I'll use this analogy. So I write a contract which is 100 lines long, and then you also write a contract which imports 10 lines from my contract. And to put numbers behind it, this isn't the actual tokenomics, but again, to make it easy to understand, let's say my 100 lines of code to deploy cost me 100 tokens, for example. So now you are writing a contract which consists of 30 lines of code, then imports 10 lines from my code base. So what you would pay for is you would pay for the 20 lines of your unique contract, which is a fully unique code on your end. But since you imported the 10 from mine, let's say you would pay 1/10. So for those 10 lines, since it's a re-import, you would only pay 1 token. So deploying your 30 line contract would cost you 21 tokens in this example, and that one single token coming to me, the original author of those 10 lines. This is the deployment part. And then for the actual transactions which involve my contract which I built using your re-importing from your contract would be distributed among the validators. So part of the transaction fees goes to the validators and the other part goes to the developers, the one who deployed the contract and also to those who have contributed to that contract by their code getting reused. So how we call them internally are the generic code developers. These are most likely people who write libraries think of like OpenZeppelin. So my goal as a generic smart contract writer is not to build decentralized applications directly, but rather to provide libraries which other developers use. By that, I save them time, I provide them with security and all that, and I also benefiting because whenever they deploy a contract which is based on my contract, they would get rewards. So it's a mutually beneficial relation between us. And the other guys who are building dApps, we call them internally specific contract developers because they are developing a specific contract for a specific use case. And they are most likely reusing generic contracts written by the generic developers who are writing abstract code for the sake and the only purpose of them getting reused in other applications. I hope that clears it a bit. Okay. Yes. In the last Ask Me Anything, you said that private functional programming languages work as internal and public functions as public. How are functions with the access modifier protected treated? So the access modifier protected, yeah, I remember this. I said, for example, with PHP, you have, if I remember correctly, the private, protected, and public functions within classes, and the answer is that they are treated however they are treated in PHP in this case, or in any other language. So if you implement a program, and maybe although we do support PHP as well, QVM is capable of it, but PHP is mostly used for writing web applications, and it's not a compiled language. But whatever the language does to protect those functions is done. So we are not doing anything extra. It's up to the language. So if you can write an application in PHP which lets you call a protected method directly, then I'm not saying that's a bug, that's an issue with PHP. I don't think you can do anything like that, but we don't do anything to prevent it, because if we would actively tamper with access modifiers in certain sets of languages, that would bring along a lot of surprises. So even if, and again, I'm not saying this, but if there is a bug with PHP which lets you call a protected function directly from the outside, then that's a bug with PHP, which should be tackled by the PHP team, and we should raise an issue with the PHP team. We are not trying to fix anything or to patch any runtime, because most likely that would cause unintended side effects as well. So we insist that we do not touch and alter the runtimes at all. We solve these questions which I previously addressed at the runtime determinism phase with kernel patches. So already these runtimes, so let's say when you request the current time in PHP, we are not patching the PHP time function to give you a very specific time, what the internal blockchain clock thinks what time it is. No, we are patching it one way below, and this guarantees us that every single language is accordingly patched. So if you launch, just so you understand more easily, by patching the kernel itself will give you the guarantee that if you request the time in a PHP contract and you request the time in a Rust-based contract in the same block, those times are guaranteed to be the same. If we would patch these time functions on the runtime, the execution context, so for Rust, there is no interpreter. So let me give you a more precise example. Let's say we throw out Rust, we take PHP and JavaScript, which are both interpreted languages, so they are comparable at this level because we could patch the time functions in both languages. But if we made a mistake and we patched it a little differently in PHP and JavaScript, they again wouldn't be able to agree on the same time being reported. So this is why it's important that we patched it in on the Linux kernel level. Okay, next one. If you have smart contracts written in different languages, each with their own verification tools, how would you establish a standardized security verification process? If you have smart contracts written in different languages, okay, each with their own verification tools. I'm not sure what verification tools you mean here. How would you establish a standardized security verification process? You mean like formal verification? Because that's not available for a lot of languages. I mean, the only thing we have to guarantee here is that for the same set of input and the same state, which comes from the blockchain state, so which block we are currently at, what is the current block hash, and of course the underlying database. So if we put these together, so you give the contract some input, you give it the same state, it should always yield the same output. And it's, well, it's easy to say it's easy as that, but essentially that's what you're aiming for. The formal verification on the source code level, that's an entirely different topic. And although it's imported, it's only an extra on top of the determinism. So even if you have a formally verified language, that doesn't mean that the execution will still be deterministic. And while you can live with one, you cannot live with the other. So if you have a formally verified language, which is super nice, and that's extra security guarantees for the developer side, and then you execute that code in an environment which is not guaranteed to be deterministic, you're going to have a bad time, but not the other way around. Even if your code cannot be formally verified by mathematics that yes, this should indeed run the way I meant it to run, it will still run in a deterministic way and wouldn't cause any problems. Okay, next one. When I use a different programming language, how do I make sure that calling programming language specific methods don't exceed gas limit? Language specific. Okay, so function. Using gas station, you have to implement helper functions yourself. No, so with the QVM-based contracts, there are other pricing parameters which are collected, and we submitted, of course, the documentation to Johann as well. But just to name a few, so there is the input size, there is the execution timeout, the generated output size, the free database slots. So there are certain parameters based on which you execute a transaction. So with the Solidity and the EVM, so this is more of an EVM thing, because Solidity is, again, just the programming language. What you care about is always the bytecode, because that's what's executed by the EVM. And EVM has pricing metrics for every single opcode. So to give you an example, for loading bytes, storing bytes into slots, for addition, multiplication, whatever. So whatever method you are accessing by these so-called opcodes, whatever you're performing inside the EVM, has a specific cost. With QVM, we are we are pricing you for a lot of different stuff, but it's not on that level. So we don't care what you do inside the VM. We just care about how much data you feed into the VM, how much data you get out of the VM, how much data you write into the database, how much data you read from the database, how many database slots you free in the database, how long is your execution timeout, and many other factors. So the pricing model for QVM is different than from EVM. Yeah, guys, I see a lot of questions, but unfortunately this session has come to an end. But please remember these, maybe post them on the community forum. They could be answered by other devs, but otherwise, see you again, and thank you for your patience. This is a really busy time for us, but I will make sure these developer Ask Me Anything sessions are happening on a recurrent basis, and I really look forward to the next one. Thank you very much for being here today. Bye-bye.